Welcome to Special Registration Deputy Training. This is a training required to become deputized to register voters on behalf of the Madison City Clerk's Office. Special registration deputies are regulated by state statute. The statutes require training be completed every 2 years, and appointments expire in December of even-numbered years. Regardless of when you become deputized during an election cycle, your appointment will end in December of the even-numbered year. You cannot be paid per registration form completed. So if you're hired by a group that's going to be conducting some voter outreach and registration drives, they cannot pay you based on the number of registration forms you hand in. Our requirements in the City of Madison are that the forms you hand in are completely legible. We want to make sure that the voters' names are spelled correctly on the poll books. We also require you to return your application forms to the clerk's office or any Madison Public Library within 3 days of having completed the registration. This allows us to efficiently process the registration forms. You may return the forms either by stopping by the clerk's office, sending the forms to the clerk's office through the mail, or if you drop them off with your local librarian, they will forward the forms to the clerk's office on your behalf. A helpful website for you and for the voters that you're working with is called MyVote. This is a statewide site that pulls information directly from the statewide voter registration system. A voter can enter his or her name and their date of birth and pull up their voter registration. If they can't remember whether they've registered at their new address, this is a good way to check. The voter can also see their polling place information, voting history, the status of their absentee ballot request, a sample ballot, and the information for their elected officials. You also can search for polling place information based on a street address using this website. In the City Clerk's office, our goal is for all eligible voters to be able to cast a ballot and have that ballot counted. As a special registration deputy, you are helping us meet that goal by making sure that people get registered to vote early. Let's review the qualifications for voter eligibility. In order to be able to vote, you must be a U.S. citizen, at least 18 years old by Election Day, a resident of Madison for 28 days, and if you've been convicted of a felony, you have to have completed the terms of your sentence, including probation and parole. Once you are off paper, you are able to register and vote. When figuring out whether you've been at an address for 28 days in order to establish residency, you do not need to take any weekends away from Madison into consideration. Any temporary absence from your place of residence does not affect your eligibility to register and vote. We also have some issues in August elections where it's a little confusing for college students to figure out their residency. For most college students, they will not have been at their current Madison address long enough to establish residency for an August election. If they had been registered in Madison previously or had lived in Madison previously for the last semester, and they intended to return to Madison in the fall, they can remain registered at that previous Madison address. It's all based on the intent to return. All voters are now required to show proof of address when registering to vote, regardless of when they register, where they register, or whether they register with a special registration deputy. We'll be talking about this a little bit later, but be aware that with each voter that you're registering, you are going to be checking for proof of address. Special registration deputies can conduct voter registration when registration is considered open. Registration closes at 5 p.m. the third Wednesday before Election Day. Special registration deputies must return all completed registrations by 5 p.m. that Wednesday, either by getting the registration form to the clerk's office, getting the registration form to the library, or putting the registration form in the mail. It needs to have that date as a postmark. Any registrations submitted after that 5 p.m. deadline cannot be on the poll list. Now let's run through the voter registration form. These forms are available through a link on our website, or you could stop by the clerk's office to request blank registration forms, or you could pick some up at your local library. The first item on the registration form that needs to be completed is an ID number. If a voter has a current and valid Wisconsin driver license, they are required to fill out that number. They don't have to show you their license, but they're required to write that number down. Only if the voter does not have a current and valid Wisconsin driver license can they write down another number, either a Wisconsin ID card number or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. If somebody does not have any of those, they don't have a Wisconsin driver license, they don't have a Wisconsin ID card, and they don't have a Social Security number, there's a box they can check to indicate they don't have any of those numbers. This does affect some voters who, for religious purposes, don't get any ID or Social Security card. For voters who have an out-of-state license or an out-of-state ID card, we do not want that number. We only want Wisconsin driver license or Wisconsin ID cards. For those who don't have a Wisconsin license, they can list the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. Next on the registration form, the voter is going to write down their name, date of birth, and their residence address in Madison. A post office box cannot be listed as a residence address. You cannot live in a post office box. The voter could list a post office box as a mailing address, but the residence address has to be a physical street location in Madison. Our biggest issue with this section of the form is that voters will forget to write down their date of birth, or they will list their date of birth with this year as the year, or they will list today's date in that field, in which case they wouldn't be old enough to register and vote. So please double check the date of birth field before the voter walks away, just to make sure it's completed and that it doesn't say this year. For the voter's name, their first name, last name, and middle initial should correspond with whatever they have listed as their ID number above on the form. There's something called, we call it a HAVA check, a Help America Vote Act check, against the state DOT and against Social Security Administration that verifies the voter's first name, middle initial, and last name to make sure they correspond. We prefer to get the full middle name if at all possible, so we don't accidentally merge this voter with another voter who has a similar name elsewhere in Wisconsin. Next, we have some optional fields. Mailing address is optional, email address is optional, and phone number is optional. We would use the voter's phone number or email if there was a problem with the registration form. If a voter has changed his or her name, they list their previous name in Section 6 of the form. The State Government Accountability Board considers a name change effective when the voter updates his or her ID, their Wisconsin driver license or Wisconsin ID card or Social Security number. Even though the voter might be staying at the same address as where they're currently registered, they still want to complete the entire form when updating their name. Section 7 is required. The voter has to fill in his or her previous address where they were last registered to vote. For a lot of voters, it's hard to remember the exact street address, but if they at least list the city and the state, that would be sufficient. Voters who do not have a traditional street address can draw a diagram in Section 8 to indicate where it is they intend to return each day. This might be the intersection of 2 streets, or it might be by a landmark, but the clerk's office needs to use this to figure out which ward they would be in, so we get them on the proper poll book, and we also make sure they get the right ballot. Then toward the end of the form are questions to determine voter eligibility. The answers to these questions have to be yes in order for the voter to be able to register and vote. The first question is asking whether they are a U.S. citizen, And the next question is asking whether they will be 18 years old or older by Election Day. Then we get to the fine print. The voter is certifying through their signature that by Election Day they will have been a resident for 28 days and that this isn't a temporary address at which they're registering. If they've been convicted of a felony, they are off paper. They've completed all the terms of their sentence, including probation and parole, and that they're not otherwise disqualified from voting. For example, they haven't placed a bet or wager on this election. Then the voter signs and dates the form in your presence. If the voter is not able to sign the form and has somebody assist them in signing the form, the assistant signs in item 12 and lists his or her address. Although you are helping all voters navigate this form, you're not listed as the assistant. The assistant would be the person who helps the voter sign the form. Then, as a deputy, you're going to check for proof of address. Now, the voter could show you the proof of address either in a paper document or an electronic format. So they might show it to you on their smartphone or their laptop or their tablet. It would be a single document that shows the voter's current name and their current address. And the documents that are acceptable are specified by state statutes. So we don't have a lot of leeway here. We have a very specific list of documents that we can accept. If you're helping a voter and they don't have any proof of address on them, they would have the option of taking the form home with them and mailing it to the clerk with proof of their address, or bringing that form to any Madison Public Library and showing their proof of address there. So we'll run through the acceptable documents that the voter can show to prove their address. You are not going to retain any copy of these documents. They're just going to show the document to you. One of the most common documents we see is a current and valid Wisconsin driver license or current Wisconsin ID card. That would mean this would not be an expired document, or if it's a license, it has not been suspended or revoked. And again, it's going to show the voter's name at the address where they are registering. The voter could also use a utility bill issued in the last 90 days. It could be water, gas, electric, phone, cable, or internet. Or a bank or credit union statement, a paycheck, or a real estate tax bill or receipt for the current year or previous year. If the voter is registering in person, they could use a residential lease to prove their address. However, this is not considered an acceptable form of proof of address if they're sending it through the mail. For voters who are attending a private college, they could show a college fee statement issued within the last 9 months along with their student ID card. The student ID won't have their local address on it, but the college fee statement would have to show their local address. And then we have the broadest category, any government-issued check or document. There are hundreds of documents that could work as a government document. We'll just run through some of the most common examples that we see. A fishing license, hunting license, or concealed weapon permit would work. A court summons, ticket or citation, or a bicycle license registration. Any statement, check, or letter from Social Security Disability, Food Share Wisconsin, document from Medicare, Medicaid, or Wisconsin Works, or a document from Badger Care, Senior Care, or unemployment. The voter might use a bartender or operator license to prove their address, a solicitor permit, or an automobile registration. They also could use a public high school transcript, report card, or a schedule showing their name at their current address. Any document from the University of Wisconsin is considered a government document, or any document from a Wisconsin Technical College is a government document. They also could use as a government document any correspondence from a federally recognized Native American tribe that is living in Wisconsin. Some documents that we often see but are not acceptable according to state statute would be insurance statements, medical bills, a business card, a magazine subscription, an expired license or ID, an out-of-state driver license, any random piece of mail addressed to the voter. For example, a card from your grandmother cannot be used to prove your address, or the sticker on mail that the post office places on envelopes to forward mail. If it's a letter from the post office confirming your new address, that's a government document, but the state has said that the sticker placed on an envelope by the post office is not considered a document. If a voter is homeless, they could use an affidavit to prove their address. This could be something on letterhead from a homeless shelter or from any public or private social service agency that provides services for the homeless. It would identify the voter and describe where it is they return each day that they're declaring to be their residence for voting purposes. This might be a park bench, the intersection of two streets, or a landmark in Madison. As a special registration deputy, you're going to document what type of proof of address was shown. You can use these abbreviations to indicate what was shown because you don't have very much room in Section 12 to indicate what the voter showed to you. We'll send you from the clerk's office a card with these abbreviations that you can have on hand as you're registering voters. Next, you're going to record the name of the agency that issued the document used to prove an address. There isn't much room on the registration form. You could either try to squeeze this in where the form is asking you what was used to prove an address, or you could write it neatly at the bottom of the registration form. The key here is that the clerk's office needs to be able to read it to enter it into the statewide voter registration system. And not all documents are going to have an account number, but if the voter shows you a document to prove their address, and that document contains an account number that is more than 6 digits long, you're required to record the last 4 digits of that account number. There's a space that says proof of residence number. That's where you'd write this down. If the proof of residence document has an account number of 6 or fewer digits, you would just need to record the last 2 digits of that account string. At the very bottom of the form, there's a space for official's signature. You are the official, so you're going to sign the form there. You also will print your name and print your deputy ID number, which you will be receiving from the city clerk's office. Some of the information on the registration form is considered confidential, and the special registration deputy cannot retain any of this information. The confidential sections are driver license number, state ID number, social security number, date of birth, and any accommodation request. For example, if a voter requests to receive a Braille ballot, that's considered confidential. There's a certification form for you to now complete on the city clerk's website. You can send this to the city clerk's office through the mail, drop it off, or send it to the clerk's office via email. And then you should expect to receive your SRD, Special Registration Deputy, packet in the mail within a few days. City Clerk's office exists to assist, so if you have any questions while you're registering voters or while you're planning an event, please do not hesitate to contact us via email, giving us a phone call, or referring to our website for additional information. Thank you.